Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bolt Report. As always, my name is Jay Recher. Alongside me is my good friend and co-host, Michael Wax. Michael, we've got a very special guest joining us today. I'm very excited to get into it. So let's jump right into it. He has been with iHeartMedia for over 9 years, is one of the hosts for J and Z on 95.3 Wade. He's the assistant program director of Wade as well, and is one of the most entertaining guys when it comes to sports media. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jay Recher. Jay, welcome to the show.
Oh man, thank you guys so much for having me. So glad to be here and yeah, let's do it, man. Let's talk some puck.
Let's get right into it. So, for those that maybe don't know exactly what you do, what is a Lightning game day like for you?
Well, it's kind of changed over the years. So initially when I was a field reporter with WDAE and iHeart, what I did was I'd show up for morning skate. I'd get there morning skate around 10:30. I would get there around 9:30, kind of get all my bearings, chill out, then wait for the guys to take the ice. And then after morning skate, inside the Lightning locker room, and get a bunch of different content for the day. Cut up some audio, make sure that we can use it back at the radio station, then back to the radio station for doing the show, and then I would head back to Amalie Arena. So it was a lot of back and forth over the years, going from home to Amalie to the station, back to Amalie, back to home. Been doing that for about like 7 or 8 years now, covering the Lightning. But yeah, just a normal day. It really isn't normal. I don't know if that's the best way to put it. That's the great thing, right, about covering a team like the Lightning and just any kind of professional sport. But getting there, try to get there as early as possible because we all know how the traffic is around Amalie, the closer you get to puck drop. So I try to get there as close to like 4:35 as I can, get into media dining, head up to the press box and kind of get my bearing set of what everything's going on. Then during the game, what I like to do is I'm live tweeting. So at Jay Recher, I'm tweeting out all the fun stats and all the things that have happened. Soon as the game is over, I record my Recher's rapid reaction, and then I head down to the locker room. And then going down to the locker room, I interview about 3 players, and then wait to hear from John Cooper. And all that stuff entails, shooting video and tweeting out all the different quotes. And it's you get into a little bit of a pattern, but I've been very lucky over the last couple of years to be able to cover this team and to be able to travel it. It feels kind of weird this year, being home for the last 6 weeks because the last couple seasons I've gone to in Colorado, I've gone up to New York, I've traveled down to South Florida following this incredible run for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So covering this team has been a blessing. It's so much fun, and the players and their personalities, getting to know these guys, the Stamkoses and the Hedmans of the world, and for somebody that's gotten a chance to grow and to know these guys, they are just as good at people as everybody thinks they are. People ask me like, "Are they really good guys?" And I'm like, "No, they're even better." So, a typical game day for me is a lot of hockey, and then coming home sometime between 11 and 12 o'clock, and continuing to put out content out there to make sure that everybody knows and feels like even if they weren't at the game, they feel like they were.
Sounds like a great day.
Certainly is. Certainly is.
So with all of these like big time games that you've talked about over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of really great moments. What game in particular has been your favorite to cover, whether it's been the stats that you provided or just the game atmosphere in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to go against the Stanley Cup final, right? I mean, Game Five a couple years ago when they beat the Montreal Canadiens, that was just something that I'll never forget. Being able to sit where I was, you're either in the press box, which is kind of above I want to say the 319 level, so you're higher up, or sometimes you get put in the auxiliary press box, was actually in the fans, like in the seats. And I've been very fortunate for the Super Bowl a couple years ago and for the Stanley Cup to actually be in the stands, which I think, maybe we're not inside and we did not buy all the food and stuff, but it's actually better because you're a little bit closer and you feel the atmosphere. So Game Five, winning that Stanley Cup final and being right by the goal, to see Ross Colton score that, potentially the game-winning goal, and to see that that's where it ended. Like that's where the cup came out of. So that entrance right in front of me. So I'm gonna have a lot of great memories. But when I'm laying on my deathbed and I'm thinking about all the great memories that I had, especially working, being in the building when the Lightning won the Stanley Cup, it's gonna be tough to match that one.
Yeah.
With the back-to-backs in particular, sorry, Jake, but with the back-to-back cups in particular, what did you notice between the 2021 being in the building, being right there, and then the year before where I don't know in particular, but I'm guessing you were not in Toronto, and
No,
so
no, no.
you're covering that as well. Like, what was that difference like?
The biggest difference, obviously, because they won that cup in the bubble against the Dallas Stars, but I was actually hosting that night. So I hosted after the Lightning won the first cup, and I was on the air till I want to say 3:45 in the morning, with so
Wow.
many just exhilarated and joyous and triumphant Lightning fans that were waiting since 2004 to be able to watch their favorite hockey team win the Stanley Cup. And so that was the big thing for me. I was on air from when they won to like 3:45, and then I remember sleeping in my office at the radio station because I had to get up and host again from 9 to 12, and then 12 o'clock hit, and I just chucked everybody the deuce. I'm like, I'm going home and I'm going to sleep. I'll see you guys in a couple of days for the boat parade. So that was the biggest difference. But I'll always remember after the first championship talking to a guy that still calls into our station a lot now, Ralph, and Ralph was dealing with cancer, and he was like crying on the air at like 2:45 in the morning, and we're all tired, but we're all like super energetic. And Ralph, I'll never forget that. Just how emotional he was and all the things that he's gone through and dealing with cancer. And, he never thought that he'd see the Lightning win the Stanley Cup again. And he did. And even to this day, when he calls in, he's like, I love you, brother. I've never met Ralph in my life, but this is the power of media. It's the power of radio. Or, he'll every couple times when he calls in, he goes, you remember that one time we spoke? And I go, yeah, Ralph, I'll never forget that. Like all the listeners were happy, but then you made them cry, because we were just super emotional. But and you guys know, like you guys are sports fans, like sports has the ability to bring out the emotion that maybe you didn't know that was there, right? Like I didn't know that night I was going to have that conversation with Ralph, and I did, and that's something that I won't forget. So that's definitely part of one of my memories of them winning that first cup. But man, to think about it, it's so hard in sports. You look at all these teams. I mean, how hard it is to win back to back. I mean, look at Colorado getting bounced in the first round this year by a Seattle Kraken team that's only been in the league for 2 years. And you look at other sports, Golden State, winning the championship last year, and then they get beat by the Lakers. So it just proves how incredible that the Lightning's run was. And then for them to even go to the finals 3 straight years, we're lucky. And I don't know if we'll realize how fortunate we are and we were until we kind of get 10 15 years down the road and go, can you believe that happened? These guys were just insane. And I'll tell you what, fellas, just looking at this team and just knowing who they are, they're not done. They're not done. I'm sure the rest and the time off is going to do them well. Even Steven Stamkos said, you know what? Yeah, you don't want to say it, but it's going to do us well. I would anticipate a very motivated Tampa Bay Lightning team next year. And if I was the NHL, the rest of the NHL teams, I'd be very concerned with that.
We've been talking about right here on the Bolt Report about how, that it doesn't seem like they're done. It doesn't feel like they're done. And we know how talented this team was, but we're talking about all these special moments with the Stanley Cup. And I'll never forget when they won it in 2020, being in a bar with all my friends and everybody cheering in the bar. It was amazing, but we're talking about all this fun times. I wanted to ask you, what is it like to watch the Lightning win the Stanley Cup in the press box? Because as we know, as the saying goes in the press box, there's no cheering in the press box.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. So it's a little different there, and that's why it was an advantage for me being in the auxiliary press box. So if I could do like a a little fist, pump under the table like nobody saw me. In the press box, it's tough. I remember my first one of my first playoff series, it was back in 2015 when the Lightning were playing the Rangers, and just looking around and the emotion of everybody. And it's like, how do you keep your emotions in check? Because we're all sports fans. Like this is the reason why we got into the business. But one thing that I have learned over time is to kind of being able to manage your emotions. As much as we'd like to say that we're fans, I think when you work in sports media, you have to learn how to be balanced, and you kind of lose, I guess, the label as a fan, and you're more of like, I think you can still pull and you still support the team, but you can't get fanatic, right? Because you have to stay even keel. You have to kind of keep things in perspective, and you have to listen. As much as we've been talking about the good things, let's not forget I've been in the locker room for some terrible things too, right? Them losing the Stanley Cup, them getting swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets, like I was there when they came back, like them losing to Toronto, like I've talked to these guys during some really bad times as well, losing the Stanley Cup final in 2015. So you have that balance, right? Like it sucks. It sucks to go into those locker rooms. Losing in the Eastern Conference Final to Washington a couple of years ago, that was one of the worst. Um, but it just, that's what it comes with the territory. You got to be able to manage your emotions. And yeah, do you lose a little bit of the fun aspect of it? Because, again, we started being sports fans when we were kids, so we always had that joyous, like that inner kid, that inner child that excites you, right? You lose that a little bit as you get older, especially when you do this job. So you do a better job of kind of compartmentalizing your feelings. So you don't, but like I said, you still get a little fist pump here or there, a little stomp on the floor when something good happens. So it still comes out at times.
So you've already mentioned Reacher's rapid reaction. What was the idea behind that?
Well, when I started doing Recher's rapid reaction, I wanted something to be instantaneous and I wanted something that was unique. And I still think like it's still getting off the ground. Like I think that it's still going to get bigger and bigger as the years go by. But now people, if I don't do it, people are asking like, what happened, man? What's going on? Like you gotta, people are looking for it. And that's the point. Like if you're going to do anything like you guys do in a podcast, you want to be as close to podcast is a little bit different because you're not doing it like right off the bat. It's not like right after something happened. That's what I was looking for something like this. But you also want to be engaging. You want something that people look forward to seeing, so they know if it's after a good win or a bad loss, like I'm going to say something, and they also know it's almost like it tease everybody up to let them know like, hey, I'm going downstairs. And when I go downstairs, if you want to hear what Steven Stamkos had to say after scoring his 500th goal, even though it was on the road, but it's coming up. So people like that. People want to feel involved. People want to know that they want to have something to react to because we're sports fans. We're reactionary, whether it's a good or a bad thing, and they want to vent sometimes. So I'll open it up and say, how are we feeling, Bolts Nation? And you'll get people, I can't believe they did this, or this guy's the greatest thing. So I kind of stumbled upon it. And then I realized that it was the groundswell. It was really something that was prevalent. People were getting into it. So I just stayed with it. And I'm going to continue to try to make it bigger and better every season. That's for sure.
We do what we call quick strike here on YouTube, where we just do kind of a quick recap after the game. I think what I love about yours is you literally walking out of the press box and going down to get set up for your interviews. So, and sometimes it's hard to do that after a big loss. I know for us, there's been times where we've done maybe 20, 30 takes trying to do after a tough loss doing one of those videos. So how many takes does it typically take you to do one of those videos?
One. It has to be one.
Okay.
I can't. And that's the beauty about it, is that I can only do it once. I can't go back. Like I can only go forward, because if I stop or I slow down, I'll miss the elevator down. I miss everything. So I have to get it in one take. So people appreciate that it's natural, right? And then you get people that like now some of my colleagues like get into it. And one guy that seems to be in a lot is Julian Breezebot. And sometimes like he'll catch himself looking and then he'll look away really quick. And I got to see him a couple months ago, and he kind of like not really made mention of it, but I think that's what he was like kind of insinuating, of like me and my videos and things like that. But yeah, it's one take, Jake, for me. You gotta be able to do it right off it, because if you don't get it that first time, you're screwed. So I've tried some things with different microphones and different camera angles and things like that. But now it's gotten pretty to the fact of everybody kind of knows too around the press box too. So Ed Encina for the Tampa Bay Times, and some of the other people, and Jan Porter, who runs the press box. She's like the press box, like mother hen. They know when I get up with about 20 seconds to go, that's what I'm about to do. So as I'm walking up the steps and I walk around the corner, you got to move quickly too, because people are moving fast. They want to get on that elevator, because if you miss that first elevator, you may not get it for another 5 minutes. So I have to be quick, and I have to be cognizant that there's people moving around me. So it's a one take thing. I try to rehearse in my head, not rehearse, but just in my head, think of, all right, I know I want to get to like 2 or 3 of the main topics. If Vesey has 35 saves, somebody scores a hat trick, that type of thing. I'm heading downstairs, make sure you follow me, be back in a second. So it's going to be 30 to 45 seconds. It's a quick hitter. A lot of times when we're trying to push stuff out on social media and we're trying to do all these things, people try to do too much. They try to, that has a really good following, and it's barely more than a minute. Like, I don't even know if any of them are longer than a minute. So that's just something to everybody out there. If you're trying to build and you're trying to create content, like, it's just got to be instantaneous. It's got to be quick right after something happens, be reactionary, get in, get out. And then if you do that and you stay with it, the consistency of it is why it works. It's doing it after every single game. I do it on the road too, for playoffs only. So once you do stuff like that, people understand and it becomes a habit. And when you become a habit, that's when people really start to dig into what you do. And it's been 2 or 3 years now since I've done Recher's Rapid Reaction, and it's something I really enjoy doing. And when I go to games, that's definitely something I look forward to doing as well.
You mentioned the elevator at Emily. I was gracious enough to do media for the Frozen Four, and I got introduced to the Emily Arena media elevator. And
Oh,
you're absolutely right. If you miss it the first time, you better wait like 15, 20 minutes for the next one.
yeah, and it's kind of the running joke with the elevator is I'll be in another arena in another city and they'll say, well, it's at least it's better than the elevator where you guys got. And I'm like, I didn't come up with the elevator. Like, it's not my fault. But we've even, like, I remember Montreal Canadiens front office guys getting so upset with the elevator, and just like they're looking around because they're on the same elevator as like workers at Emily Arena, and they'll have big trash receptacles. And we've kind of come into I know like every passageway now at Emily Arena. So if I miss that elevator, I know exactly which stairway to go down, to take a different elevator, to take an escalator, to somehow get down to the ground floor. I mean, it's taken almost 10 years to figure it out, but you want to get that elevator. You get that freight elevator, you're in good shape. Because if you don't, man, you're in big, big trouble. So that's definitely one of those fun, little quirky things about Emily Arena where the Lightning call home.
Somebody needs to get on to get that extra elevator. We can try to fix that for the
I
future
know.
people in future years. All right, so you've done your rapid reaction. You got on the elevator. You're headed down to the press conference. You've done so many press conferences now over all these years. What players do you enjoy talking to the most?
All right. So on this current Lightning team, I mean, it starts and ends with Steven Stamkos. Like, he is the man, and he speaks after wins. He speaks after losses. Gotten close with Stammer over the years. He's just a great guy, like a great player and an even better human being. And again, that's Stammer and Hetty are the two guys. They set the standard. And when your best players are your best guys and the hardest workers, like, that's why the Lightning are going to continue to be good. And speaking of those two, Ross Colton always compliments my shoes, so I'm always a Ross Colton guy too. Patrick Maroon, he's always something, and he's never a guy that is shying away from having a conversation, and he'll talk to you forever. He'll sit there. It doesn't matter how long it takes. But those three guys are probably the best ones to talk to. And then John Cooper. I mean, there's nobody like Coop. I mean, he is one of the smartest people I know, and he's another guy that busts my chops about my shoes all the time. I mean, he even gets his son to make fun of me. So yeah, we're lucky, man. We got some great personalities with the Bolts.
So it's crazy to say this, but you mentioned it earlier. You would be somewhere else if this was years past, whether it was Colorado or Montreal, or even before that in Washington and Pittsburgh. As we're shooting this, yesterday was the 6-year anniversary of Drew in for Sergachev, which the Lightning were able to get a fantastic player in a cap crunch. We're in a very similar but not identical cap crunch now with a lot of question marks. What sort of out of the blue moves could we potentially see as we head towards the draft?
That's a good question. Usually when you're talking about the blue moves, what Julian Brisebois has done in the past is kind of get that Nick Paul, Tanner Jeannot type of guy at the trade deadline. It's gotten tougher and tougher because now all these contracts that were signed in the previous offseason, Cirelli, Chernak, and Sergachev, now all that money's starting to kick in. So now you're looking at guys around, and it's more about trying to maintain some level of cap consistency because you're going to have to fill out your bottom six guys. So I don't know if necessary, unless you trade a bigger guy, and I post this on my show earlier last week about the only guy that you would think about trading or would be able to trade and really get big time value back would be a guy like Nikita Kucherov. But I don't see that as being a feasible thing. Like, you're not going to get a bunch of guys back that are going to be able to replace his production. I mean, this is a top 5 scorer in the league. You know, we know what some of his deficiencies are defensively. I think he's gotten better in that area. I do think that Alex Killorn will not return, and I love Killer. Killer's another guy that I didn't mention, but Killer's another guy. He's great to talk to, and we could talk to Killer about everything. Phenomenal golfer. He's just a great dude. Obviously, the Doc Talk champion of the world. I just think it's impossible to bring him back. If the Lightning find a way to do it, then Julian is a genius. But he played so well last year, and the NHL Players Association is going to want him to sign for. Oh, if he takes less, people will say, and it's not. It's not a sentimental thing. It can't be. I mean, he's got to go get his money, just like Palat. Like, this is what happens when you play really well on a good team. Unfortunately, with a hard salary cap, you're not going to be able to bring everybody back. It's just the nature of the beast. Now, a guy like Ross Colton is a guy that I think that they could move and possibly get some things back, whether it's draft pick, whether it's salary relief, because Tanner Jeannot, you're not going to trade all that stuff for him and not try to find a way to bring him back as a restricted free agent. Perry's probably gone. Belmar's probably gone. You're already bringing back Isimon. So you know that Point, Kucherov, and Stamkos are coming back. You know that Cirelli, Hagel, and Paul are coming back. So that's 6 guys, and Tanner Jeannot 7, Isimon 8. So you have 4 other spots. Pat Maroon's coming back. That's 9. He's got 1 more year on his contract. So you're looking for 3 spots there. Colton, could he fit in there? It's going to be tough, man. You're going to have to try to get rid of him, I think, and maybe fill with some of those younger guys that we haven't really necessarily seen as much over the years. Some of these young dudes from AAA and Syracuse. The back line, you're going to probably fill somebody in. Ian Cole, I doubt that he comes back. So my one big guy, and also you need a backup goalie, because I don't think Brian Elliott's coming back. But yeah, I think Ross Colton is the guy that you're going to probably have to move.
I'm still holding out hope that Killorn comes back, because I know how much he loves it here in Tampa, and he said that he doesn't want to go anywhere. And that cap,
I know. Palat said the same thing too. You know what I mean? That's what we have to remember. Like, everybody wants to stay in Tampa. Nobody wants to leave.
That's
but
true.
When you have an opportunity to make the money that you can make, and also we have to understand, when you are a part of a players association like the NHLPA, if you start having guys taking far less of their market value, then you screw it up for everybody else. So not everybody has a situation like Alex Killorn where he wants to stay. There's other people that are saying, hey, I'm getting paid $2 million, but I should be getting paid $4 million. Well, if a team matches his numbers, and they may be right, but if a team matches his numbers up with Alex Killorn and goes, well, Killorn, he's only getting $2 million from the Lightning because of that deal, you screw it up for everybody else. And I know people don't care about that because sentimental, we want Killer back. Nobody wants more Killer back more than me. But realistically, it's a business, and that's bad business for hockey. And you don't want that for your players. It's hockey. We want those guys to make money. They're the one sport out of the 4 that make the least amount. So we want our guys to get paid. We want that salary cap to go up. A situation like this, yeah, it would be great if Killer would come back, but man, that could be some terrible ramifications. I just don't see the Players Association to go for something like that.
That's something I never thought about.
I think the NHLPA is already mad at the Lightning. They have been for a couple of years. You've got players like Stamkos who took less than John Tavares, who signed for 11 the next year, and Stamkos, in my opinion, is better than Tavares. But
I agree with that. But the thing is that Tavares making that money and Stamkos making his money, you also take into account, right, the no state income tax, which is big for that. And once you get to that amount, 8, 9, 10, they're a little more, I know it's weird to say this, but 2, 3, and 4 is a lot bigger of a gap than 8, 9, and 10, right? Because there's so few players that are going to be around 8, 9, and 10, right? The majority of the guys, I think I saw it the other day, is around 2.5. So it's a big difference if a guy gets paid 2.9 million and 2.1, rather than a guy if he makes let's say 9.1 and 9.9, right? They're all right, that's a lot of money anyway. even looking at guys like Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves, they got all that money from Chicago, and for a while they were the highest paid for years. And you never see that. You guys know about football. Like, it seems like that number always goes up. Hockey, it's like a lot of the guys are right here in the middle, and that difference is huge. So Killer can make 5-6 million. He really can. And if he takes a $2 million deal, people are gonna lose their mind. I don't know if they'd ever get that. And listen, and for Alex, and I know how much he wants to stay, we can all agree that he's earned it, right? He's earned the right to be able to go out there, get that contract, pull out. And look at Andre's impact on New Jersey, making them a Stanley Cup playoff team, beating the Rangers. Yeah, it sucks, man. It sucks to think that Killer won't be here, but unless they trade somebody, right? That's the other thing. If you do trade a Colton, I still think they can't do it because of what their number crunch is going to be. If you trade one of the core guys, like, yeah, I mean, that's the tough part. Like, do you want to get rid of a Stamkos or a Kucherov for Point? As much as I love Killorn, I would probably rather have those three guys than Killer, even though their playoff performances weren't as good as his. In the grand scheme of things, you know how important those guys are to the entire equation.
I think overall, last year I know Under Palat, wanted to stay and asked Lightning for like a Nick Paul type contract. I think the PA was cool with him signing for 6 million instead of like 3.1 or whatever Palat was asking for. So
exactly, that's another great point, right? So now you have a guy. There's a precedence there of if something like that happens, they'll go, well, Palat just signed for that, and you're going to sign for less than that. Like, maybe they would find it. I don't know. But listen, if the Lightning come out, I'd be very surprised if Alan Killorn would come back. But like you said, they've been pissing people off for the last couple of years. So if they found some kind of loophole, right, where Julian Breezeball was like, hey, let's do this funky type deal where you move it around. Like, if anybody can figure it out, it's Julian Breezeball. I just don't think it's very likely. But I love Julian. He's a capologist. That's the important thing. You're seeing more general managers that were capologists. So these guys know it like the back of their hand. And that's why they're not afraid to trade draft picks. I was just looking at the draft picks. I don't think the Lightning have a pick until the 4th or 5th round. He looks at those picks and he goes, we're going to pick in the bottom half, the bottom third. And the chances that those guys have to play 200 games in the NHL are very low. I'd rather a proven commodity. So that's why he's gone out and he's gotten the Hagels and the Pauls and the Tanner Jeannots, and why he's gone out and gotten Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow over the years, because he goes, yeah, those draft picks are nice, but if those guys never pan out, then what's the sense? It's just like, ooh, look at that shiny new toy that you never play with. Like, go get a grown commodity and try to win now, because Julian, more than anybody, understands that you don't have an all-world goaltender and don't have a top 3 defenseman and don't have the offensive firepower that you have right now all at the same time. So you got to strike while the iron's hot. And that's why I'm optimistic about the Lightning going forward, because he's not just, ho-hum, we're going to do the best we can. No, he's like, this doesn't happen very often. We got to go now. Tough decisions are made, but he's definitely going to try to win a Stanley Cup every single year that those guys are together. And that's got to give you a lot of faith, a lot of confidence as a Tampa Bay Lightning fan.
There's a reason we call him a wizard. It's amazing what he's able to pull off. All right, Jay, before we close out the show, we're going to do something a little new that we're trying out for the first time. So you're going to be the inaugural guest on this. We're going to do a quick minute with Jay. I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions, and I just want you to give me your answer. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. First one, favorite place to eat in Tampa?
Favorite place to eat in Tampa? I'm going to go right now. It's Palazzo's Pizza, my guy right now. Yeah, Jason Fox. Go check out Palazzo's on Platte.
What is your favorite thing to do in Tampa?
My favorite thing to do in Tampa now, it's actually to go to the beach. I love going to Pasagrille. I know it's not Tampa, but the beach now, that's like my new thing. Love it.
Favorite Lightning game ever attended as a fan?
Favorite Lightning game? It was actually a couple years ago on Long Island with my dad for his birthday. Lightning Islanders. I worked at the Ranger game, the Devils game, and then I went to the Islander Lightning game as a fan with my dad. After the Lightning lost to Columbus, people said, what happened? I said, they lost 4 games in a row, and everybody was laughing at me. So I wore that in my old hometown. But that was my favorite game because I got to go with my dad.
All right. How about favorite player of all time for the Lightning?
Oh, man. It's a tough one. I love them all. It's Stamkos now. Was Ryan McDonough, but I'm going to go Ryan Callahan. That's my boy.
Favorite road arena?
MSG. That's the world's most famous arena. That's the best place. Listen, if you can go to a place where they've hoisted the Stanley Cup, they've played NBA Finals games, and Muhammad Ali fought there, and the Pope has been there, WrestleMania, like they've done everything in that building. So definitely MSG.
All right, I like this one because we were talking about Killorn. Jet skis or boats?
Oh man, I've only been on a jet ski once, but I loved it. I love boats too. I'll go jet skis because of Killorn.
All right, last thing, predictions for how all three teams, the Lightning, the Bucks, and the Rays, how are they going to finish this year?
Lightning gonna win the Stanley Cup again, just because we're so far out. And yeah, I like to shoot high. I've already said, and this is before the season, that the Rays were gonna win the World Series, and Randy Arozarena was gonna win the World Series MVP. So I'll stay with that. I think the Bucks finish 8-9 and have a much better year than everybody thinks, and I think they just narrowly missed the playoffs. I think let's see. One of the teams, I think maybe the Saints. I don't like saying the Saints. Let's say like a sneaky. Let's say the Falcons go 9-8. I'm not gonna give the Saints credit here with you guys. I'll go the finishing tied, maybe second or tied for second in the NFC South. Just miss a wild card spot, 8-9.
I like it. Well, Jay, thank you so much for joining us and taking some time out of your day to your crazy schedule to come talk Lightning hockey with us. We really do appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys, man. Thank you so much for having me. Let's do it again soon.
All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe right here on the channel so you don't miss out on future episodes just like this one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Go Bolts!